Welcome, Fright Night Vault listeners. Tonight's account comes from a man who kept the lights on when the rest of us slept, alone among transformers and steel fences where the dark hums. He thought routine would protect him. He thought rules would save him. But the thing waiting in the drainage ditch beyond the floodlights had learned his name, and it was patient. Subscribe to the vault and never walk alone again. Listen in the dark. Watch with the lights off. If you hear your name spoken from where no one stands, do not answer. My name is Caleb Vargas, night tech at the Briar Hollow substation off County Road 12. If you've ever driven past a chain-link yard stacked with steel frames and porcelain insulators humming like a giant beehive, that's a substation. We call the constant low vibration the song. You stop noticing it unless it changes. On Tuesday, the song changed. I clocked in at 10:58 p.m., scanned the yard with my flashlight, and did the same checks I've done for 5 years. Fence integrity, gate locks, breaker panels, relay temps, oil levels. The air smelled like dust, hot metal, and the creosote of the old pole line. A dry wind pushed grit across the gravel. Normal. Two small things were not normal. First, the floodlight over the north fence stuttered. Not a full flicker, just a quick dim like a blink. Second, along the outside ditch, where storm runoff collects, I saw shoe prints in the mud. Barely there, but fresh enough to hold a rim of water. They tracked toward the culvert that goes under the service road, and then stopped. No prints that came back. I told myself they were from a day crew lineman. Then I told myself to stop telling myself things. Inside the control shed, the radio hissed. We keep one tuned to county emergency. It's usually static and scanner chatter about minor wrecks. I laid my logbook on the counter, took a sip from the thermos, and felt the temperature slide a notch. Not cold, just suddenly less held. Like the room exhaled, I made my rounds again, slower. The song of the yard seemed sharper, the hum divided into higher threads, one thread almost like a voice under breath. The fence rattled softly in the wind, a common sound, but this rattle had a rhythm, 3 quick taps, a pause, 2 more. I looked to the north floodlight. It blinked again. I keyed the radio to test its squelch. The speaker spat and cleared. Over the hiss, something moved, like throat over gravel, and then a shape of sound pressed through the static. Caleb. I let go of the key. I didn't answer. I told myself, scanner bleed. I told myself a dispatcher with a bad connection. I stepped outside because standing still made the shed feel too close, too filled with my own breath. Gravel ground under my boots. The ditch along the fence carried a thread of water from last week's storm. I stood at the culvert where the prints had ended. The floodlight held steady now, the air still. That's when the smell reached me. Wet earth and algae, yes, but underneath it something like a drowned battery, metallic, old. I crouched to look inside the culvert. Black water. On the far side, a shape might have been weeds, or it might have been hair stuck to concrete. I'm not a superstitious person. I've been barked at by stray dogs at 3 a.m., trapped a raccoon in the trash bay, called an ambulance once for a guy who nodded off in his truck across the road. I know the noises a place makes when it settles. I know how dark invents things. Still, I went back to the shed and locked the door. The radio hissed. I turned it down and logged the floodlight anomaly, the ditch prints, the radio artifact. Writing the words helped. Making a record makes a thing behave. That's when the hum shifted again, like the whole yard took a breath in and forgot to let it out. From the far end of the fence came the same tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, then closer, same rhythm, then close enough that the shed's metal skin answered with a small, hollow knock beside my ear. I didn't move. I listened. And from the drainage ditch outside the north fence, a voice shaped my name a second time. Not loud, not theatrical, just certain. Caleb. The voice stopped when I switched off the radio. Silence filled the shed, dense, heavy, wrong. Even the yard hum seemed to retreat, like the current itself was holding its breath. I told myself I imagined it. I told myself too many nights alone will make you hear your own nerves speaking back. But the logbook page kept vibrating under my hand, tremoring in rhythm with the hum outside. I stepped out again, flashlight tight in my grip. The beam caught dust, and behind it the field of towers and wires looked like a forest of black ribs. Each frame shivered under invisible pressure. Halfway down the north fence, the floodlight blinked out completely. The ditch vanished into dark. I heard the water move, not a splash, more like something dragging through it. "County maintenance," I called, though my voice cracked halfway through. "If you're out there, call out." No answer. Only the steady suction sound, a dragging breath that matched the rhythm I'd heard on the metal. Then, faintly, the sound of someone standing up inside the culvert. I ran back toward the shed, but the door had already drifted open. The air pouring out was cold enough to bite my teeth. Inside, the monitors that showed breaker status were all red, every line in overload, yet no alarms were sounding. The speakers whispered with static, words buried in it, looping. "Let me in. Let me in. Let me in." I killed the main switch. Every light in the yard died. The hum collapsed into silence, and in that silence, something kept humming anyway. A note deeper than machinery, closer than the walls. It was behind me. I turned the flashlight, slow. The beam hit condensation crawling down the inside of the shed door, water beating where there shouldn't be any. It smelled like the ditch, iron and stagnant. A handprint pressed into the metal from the outside, fingers long enough to span halfway across the panel. The print dripped, though the night was dry. I backed toward the far wall. The radio sprang to life again, a male voice distorted but unmistakably mine. "Caleb, open the door." The flashlight flickered. Outside, the floodlight flashed once more, and in that brief flare I saw the ditch water standing higher, almost level with the yard. Something was climbing out of it, thin, bent, arms braced wide like it had waited years for the strength to rise. Its skin wasn't skin, it shimmered like fluid metal, reflecting the red warning lamps inside the shed. Its face was a hollow echo of mine, mouth open in a silent hum. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The air felt stolen from my lungs. Then the power surged back on by itself. Every light blazed white, and in that brightness, it wasn't there. Just the dripping footprints on the gravel, leading from the culvert to my door, and stopping inches short of the threshold. That's when I realized something. The fence wasn't just rattling from the wind. It was breathing. The fence shuddered like something alive, every bolt straining against the steel. I stared at the door handle. It trembled once, twice, then began to turn. I threw my shoulder against it, forcing it shut, but the metal under my palms pulsed, slow, rhythmic, in time with my heartbeat. Then a voice behind the door, my own voice again. "Let me in, Caleb. You left me down there." The words crawled through the seam, thick with the sound of water. I stumbled backward, tripping over the chair. The flashlight rolled, its beam slicing across the floor and catching movement under the desk. Mud dripping, pooling, trailing away from the door. The radio clicked once. Static surged, then cleared to a low, steady hum. It wasn't electrical anymore. It was a human throat, humming the same pitch the substation had carried all night. "Stop," I said, barely a whisper. "Please stop." The hum deepened. The lights flickered red. Outside the windows, every tower in the yard vibrated, each wire shivering like a web caught in wind. The entire grid sang back to the thing waiting at my door. It pressed again, harder now, and I saw the metal bend inward. The handle jerked free from my grip. Cold water sprayed across my arm. I fell back as the door gave way. Only it didn't swing open. It melted forward, like the shape of something was pushing through the steel itself. A head emerged first, bald, slick, and dripping, eyes black, mouth humming. The face was mine, but wrong. stretched, waterlogged, smiling. It stepped through the wall as if the metal were skin. Each step left wet, muddy prints that steamed on the concrete. I backed into the far corner, holding the flashlight like a weapon. Its beam cut through the mist spilling from its shoulders. The thing spoke without opening its mouth. The words came from everywhere. You heard the song. You answered. I shook my head. What are you? The smile widened. The humming stopped. I'm what you drowned. Images hit me all at once. Flood control training 5 years ago. The rescue attempt at the reservoir. The man we never found. His name was Elijah. I'd held the line, but the current took him. The ditch below this station feeds the same water system. The thing took another step. Water streamed from its hands, trailing faint sparks as it touched the control panel. The breakers clicked alive one by one. Lights across the yard began to pulse in a sequence. Red, white, like a heartbeat. You left me in the dark, it said. I came back when the lights hummed again. Then it opened its mouth, wide enough to swallow sound itself. The hum roared back, filling every inch of space. The windows bulged. The gauges burst. I clamped my hands over my ears, but I could still feel it inside my skull. And over the noise, I heard it whisper one last thing, so close it might have been inside my breath. Now, you'll never turn the lights off again. When I woke, the yard was silent. The power was back, steady, too steady, like the hum had flattened into one endless note. The monitors glowed green again. My watch said 6:12 a.m., but the horizon looked wrong. The sky stayed dark, just barely tinted red behind the towers. The floor around me was bone dry. No water, no mud, no footprints. Only the faint imprint of a hand across the metal door, burned into the paint. I drove home before sunrise, hands shaking the whole way. Didn't even clock out, didn't look back at the station. The hum followed me anyway, through the truck speakers, through the power lines above the road, through the silence between the radio frequencies. I quit the next day, turned in my badge, my keys, my logbook. They said I looked pale, said maybe I'd inhaled coolant or carbon, that hallucinations can happen in low oxygen enclosures. I nodded. I didn't tell them the truth, that something inside that ditch had been waiting for my voice, not the other way around. That night I unplugged every appliance in my house, sat in the dark, no humming, no lights, just quiet, until I heard the faint tap, tap, tap against my breaker box in the hallway. 3 quick taps, a pause. 2 more, the same rhythm. I stood frozen as the power meter outside began to spin, though nothing was on. Then, from the vents, the same calm, wet voice whispered my name. Caleb. I don't sleep much now. The lights flicker when I blink too long. Sometimes the reflection in the window hums before I do. I think it's learning the new circuits, waiting for another signal, another voice to answer, and maybe, somewhere out beyond the fence line, in the drainage ditch of another substation, someone else will hear it humming tonight. And make the same mistake I did, because it's still out there. And it still hungers. That was the one who hummed beneath the wires, a lonely job, a restless current, and something that doesn't forgive being left in the dark. Slip on your headphones, turn out the lights, and if the hum ever stops, run before it starts again. We upload daily. Subscribe to the Vault and never walk alone again. See you on the next story.